Welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. This is The Prophet by Kahlil Gibran. And the format is we are currently in the midst of The Prophet. I think we have finished. The last one we did was on children. And now we are moving from there to the next sections. The format is Maritza will be sharing the screen, and then we will have two readings of different pieces. And after the two readings, we'd love to hear what you have to say. All right, so that's the plan. Over to you, Maritza. Maritza, if you could just share the screen and do the first reading. Who would like to do the second reading? Go ahead and type R in the chat to volunteer to read. We would like to have as many different readers as possible. So it'll be Maritza and Evanik to get us started. Maritza.
Is that a good size? Do you need a little bigger?
That's good.
All right. Then said a rich man, "Speak to us of giving." And he answered, "You give but little when you give of your possessions. It is when you give of yourself that you truly give. For what are your possessions but things you keep and guard for fear you may need them tomorrow? And tomorrow, what shall tomorrow bring to the overprudent dog burying bones in the trackless sand as he follows the pilgrims to the holy city? And what is fear of need but need itself? It is not dread of thirst when your well is full, the thirst that is unquenchable, is not dread of thirst when your well is full, the thirst that is unquenchable. There are those who give little of the much which they have, and they give it for recognition, and their hidden desire makes their gifts unwholesome. And there are those who have little and give it all. These are the believers in life and the bounty of life, and their coffer is never empty. There are those who give with joy, and that joy is their reward. And there are those who give with pain, and that pain is their baptism. And there are those who give and know not pain in giving, nor do they seek joy, nor give with mindfulness of virtue. They give as in yonder valley the myrtle breathes its fragrance into space. Through the hands of such as these, God speaks, and from behind their eyes, he smiles upon the earth. It is well to give when asked, but it is better to give unasked through understanding. And to the open-handed, the search for the one who shall receive is joy greater than given. And is there aught you would withhold? All you have shall someday be given. Therefore, give now, that the season of giving may be yours and not your inheritors. You often say, I would give, but only to the deserving. The trees in your orchard say not so, nor the flocks in your pasture. They give that they may live, for to withhold is to perish. Surely he who is worthy to receive his days and his nights is worthy of all else from you. And he who has deserved to drink from the ocean of life deserves to fill his cup from your little stream. And what desert greater shall there be than that which lies in the courage and the confidence, nay, the charity of receiving? And who are you that men should rend their bosom and unveil their pride, that you may see their worth naked and their pride unabashed? See first that you yourself deserve to be a giver and an instrument of giving. For in truth, it is life that gives on to life, while you, who deem yourself a giver, are but a witness. And you receivers, and you are all receivers, assume no weight of gratitude, lest you lay a yoke upon yourself and upon him who gives. Rather, rise together with the giver on his gifts as on wings. For to be over mindful of your debt is to doubt his generosity, who has the free-hearted earth for mother and God for father.
Thank you, Maritza. Next up is going to be Evanik. Evanik, go ahead.
Then said a rich man, "Speak to us of giving." And he answered, "You give but little when you give of your possessions. It is when you give of yourself that you truly give. For what are your possessions but things you keep and guard for fear you may need them tomorrow? And tomorrow, what shall tomorrow bring to the overprudent dog burying bones in the trackless sand as he follows the pilgrims to the holy city? And what is fear of need but need itself? It is not dread of thirst when your well is full, the thirst that is unquenchable. Those are those, there are those who give little of the much which they have, and they give it for recognition, and their hidden desire makes their gifts unwholesome. And there are those who have little and give it all. These are the believers in life and the bounty of life, and their coffer is never empty. There are those who live with joy, and that joy is their reward. And there are those that give with pain, and that pain is their baptism. And there are those who give and know not pain in giving, nor do they seek joy, nor do they give with mindfulness of virtue. They give as in yonder valley. The myrtle breaches the fragrance into space. Through the hands of such as these, God speaks, and from behind their eyes he smiles upon the earth. It is well to give when asked, but it is better to give unasked through understanding. And to the open-handed, the search for one who shall receive is joy greater than giving. And is there aught you would withhold? All that you have shall someday be given. Therefore give now, that the season of the giving may be yours, and not your inheritors. You often say, I would give, but only to the deserving. The tree in your orchard say, not so, nor the flocks in your pasture. They give that they may live, for to withhold is to perish. Surely he who is worthy to receive his days and his nights is worthy of all else from you. And he who has deserved to drink from the ocean of life deserves to fill his cup from your little stream. And what desert greater shall there be than that which lies in the courage and the confidence, may the charity of receiving? And who are you that men should rend their bosom and unveil their pride, that you may see their worth naked and their pride unabashed? See first that you yourself deserve to be a giver, and that an instrument of giving. For in truth it is life that gives unto life, while you who deem yourself a giver but are but a witness. And you receivers, and you are all receivers, assume no weight of gratitude, lest you lay a yoke upon yourself and upon him who gives. Rather rise together with the giver on his gifts as on wings. For to be over mindful of your debt is to doubt his generosity, who has the free hearted earth for mother and God for father.
Wow. All right, folks, would love your comments. Go ahead and type in exclamation mark to comment on anything that spoke to you. We're going to start with Evanik. Evanik, go ahead.
I think what spoke to me is the beginning where it talks about being a giver, and telling people to give of their possessions is easy, because I think for a lot of people, even to give of their possessions is not easy. And when they talk about being a giver, and then you're like, oh, I will give to people that deserve it. Well, I mean, how do you deem who deserves it, right? You don't know everybody's story. And, a lot of people say, I don't have anything to give, but, you can give of yourself. And when I think of that is, give of your time, get to know people, give of your time, get to know the situation, give of your time, just hearing people out. I don't think it's giving just in a charitable sense. It's giving people, especially people you don't know, giving them the opportunity to get to know them. Giving of your time and your effort, and giving of yourself over to a conversation to maybe get to know a person that, you don't know if they deserve it or not, but because they are a human being. And that's it. And I love that part where he's like, because they share the day and the night with you, that is the reason why they are deserving. And I think a lot of times, like, it speaks to me because I think sometimes we don't give of ourselves to people, and we're guarded because we're going to give to her. And it speaks to it in this poem where he talks about, you know, some people give out of pain. And I think at first I thought, like, these are people who kind of like give out pain, like, people who, are violent towards other people. And I think they get it in return. And in my mind, I'm like, good, because they deserve that. But I don't think he's talking about that. I think he's like, even after you've been hurt, even after you've been, um, through the ringer, so to speak, by other people, still give. And that's what you're giving out of. You're giving out of your pain, and, recognizing that there's pain is still giving. So, I'll have more thoughts later, but those were my initial thoughts. I thought this part was actually, it was beautiful and painful all at the same time.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Evanik. Next up is Maritza, followed by Narima. Folks, go ahead and type exclamation mark. I'd love to hear what you got from this. Maritza.
For me, the paragraph that kind of stopped me in my tracks and stops me in my tracks every time I read or hear this is the line that says, "And who are you, that men should rend their bosom and unveil their pride, that you may see their worth naked and their pride unabashed." And it stops me because it's like it's shining a spotlight on the fact that should I dare to demand that the person I am giving to be worthy of the giving, a subjective standard, what I'm in fact doing is demanding that they lay themselves bare to me. And who am I to make that demand? And it's a humbling thing to see in black and white, because one doesn't think that one is moving forward with hubris on something so, seemingly simple. Like, even, when you say, oh, I don't want to give money, I'll give food, to a homeless person. Even that, it's a judgment. So this line, to me, it's a very beautiful and poetic way of saying, careful in your judgments, as it were. And then it gets even more like profound, because then he says, see first that you yourself deserve to be a giver and an instrument of giving. And it's that whole idea of, those in glass house, or what is it that, glass houses, like make sure your own house is in order before you go try pointing out to people the dirt in theirs. And I think that we assume, well, most people tend to, assimilate that for their day to day, and with people that they consider acquaintances or friends or family, but we don't extend that same courtesy to someone unknown. And I think this here is that very gentle admonition that perhaps we should attempt to do so. And it just keeps going, because then he tells us that you're not really a giver, you're just a witness of life given to another life. And if that is just, there's such beauty in that. And the way I said it leaves me unsatisfied. I have to read it the way it's written. It says, "For in truth, it is life that gives unto life, while you, who deem yourself a giver, are but a witness." There's such beauty there, and very, very gentle rebuke for something you may have done, something you might do. But it's not like, there's no negative still. It's just an invitation to view things in a slightly different manner as we walk upon this earth. And I think it's just utterly beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you, Marissa. Next up is Narima. Narima, go ahead.
Thank you. It's to re-echo what Maritza just said. It's removing the judgment. Fast forward to the time that it was written to now. Like, for example, we have a lot of homeless people, and you see them in the street, and people tend to judge in a way, saying, well, if I give money, they can just take it and go buy drugs, and I'm contributing to that habit. And you could see they're definitely addicted, and whatever the case might be. But some people opt to giving like a sandwich or food. And I think it's you don't really know, and you have to take things at face value, and maybe just give from your heart, and realize you do have the opportunity and privilege to maybe help somebody, and that in itself is a good thing.
Thank you, Narima. Next up is Gary. Gary, go ahead.
I really don't have a whole lot to add except to echo what everybody else has been saying. But what it reminded me of, this idea that being raised in a Christian home, they talk about, if you give and there's strings attached, it's not really a gift. It's no longer a gift if there's an expectation. The whole point of the gift is that it's free and it's unconditional. And so I just love this section of I give, and just echoing back what you've all said, because we all do the exact opposite though, right? We want to give somebody who's worthy. We want to make certain it goes to a good cause. We want to be judicious with our giving. But the whole point of giving is that there's nothing attached to it. You're just giving freely.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Gary. Next up is Brian. Brian, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to make a comment, but
Narima, go ahead. Our general procedure is that you just go ahead and type exclamation mark, so we get turns to talk. But please go ahead.
No, it's just, it comes to the point that I think Gary just said. Altruism, does that really exist? Because it gets, philosophy can get very complex. That if you are gaining from it, maybe it's not true altruism, but hey, we got to take things at face value and just do what when we see someone in need, or we want to do good without.
Thank you, Narima. Next up is Brian.
Okay, there's a lot in all of this. Obviously, it's a very strong section, but the part I like most here is where he says it's well to give when asked, but it's better to give unasked through understanding. We can all see when people are in need. We can see what they want. We often, mostly, in fact, choose to ignore it. But we know it's there, and we can take the advantage here of doing it. It's the last part of that section that really gets me. It says, therefore give now, for the season of giving may be yours and not your inheritors. That is all very powerful to me. I can't go on because my voice is breaking up now. So
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. So I have a comment, whenever I read this book, I can see the echoes of Christianity in it so deeply. Like this entire thing, you can read it as grace, the comment about grace, and you can look at it as the cross. It is all about kind of saying that, you're bathed in grace, you are fortunate to have this life. And what an amazing thing, you did not do anything for life. It just comes. You have all this wonderful world around you, all these wonderful people around you. And it is just given to you by grace. So it's like, it's really, humbling to see how much we are given. And then throughout it's all about, he's saying, it's not about giving your things, but giving of yourself. It is moving the locus of this argument from outside to inside. And of course, the culmination of that in the Bible is the New Testament. And the idea that you take on, you basically have to, it is saying that the value of things is lesser than the value of your own volition, and your act of doing the right thing is the most important thing that you have, and that's what you can give. And in a sense, that is divine, in the sense that comes from this great grace that we have inside of us. And so it just completely changes. Like and I see this as a foundation for everything that he's saying. So again and again throughout these sections, I keep hearing the Gospel of John. So that's how I read it. And the Gospel of John, and the brilliance of Gibran is that he has taken that in so deeply, and he's able to express it in completely different words, which are his own, which capture these points, which are enormously delicate and beautiful and profound, and are quite different from the way in which modern people think, the way in which all of us think. And it really challenges all of that. You're saying that, look, you are able to give, you are able to add something to the world. Be grateful for the fact that you can add something to the world, rather than saying, I'm giving it to this person. You're adding something to the world. You're given a lot. Now, what are you going to add to the world? What are you going to give? And it's the idea of sending and receiving that is behind all of this. So it's a very profoundly spiritual way of thinking. On one hand, another, it is also, I think, very true in terms of our own psychology. Like, moment you say that you are attached to your things, whether it is ideas, your emotions, your habits, your social system, your wealth, all of that, you stop growing and you get into the mode of trying to protect it. You become overcome by fear. But when you focus on the cause which generates all of this, which is your will, which is your commitment to doing the right thing, which is your love of of the greatest thing. And that love is what he's talking about. That's what he's saying as what you can fundamentally give, what is of your own, not the things that you own, but yourself. So that's what I get from it. Next up is Nalini. Nalini, go ahead.
I, of course, enjoyed the commentary from everyone. The two lines that touched me the most. It is well to give when asked, but it is better to give unasked. To understanding, and to the open-handed, the search for one who shall receive is joy greater than giving. That's all.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Nalini. All right. If nobody has any more comments, we can go to the next section. Maritza, could you go ahead and share? Folks who would like to read, we would like new people to read. Go ahead and type R if you would like to volunteer to read. It's always wonderful to have multiple voices reading. So go ahead and type R if you would like to read. We'll start with Gary. We're going to have two readings. So if you would like to read, still go ahead and type R. Gary, go ahead.
Then an old man, a keeper of an inn, said, "Speak to us of eating and drinking." And he said, "Would that you could live on the fragrance of the earth, and like an air plant be sustained by the light. But since you must kill to eat, and rob the newly born of its mother's milk to quench your thirst, let it then be an act of worship. And let your board stand an altar on which the pure and the innocent of forest and plain are sacrificed for that which is purer and still more innocent in man. When you kill a beast, say to him in your heart, by the same power that slays you, I too am slain, and I too shall be consumed. For the law that delivered you into my hand shall deliver me into a mightier hand. Your blood and my blood is naught, but the sap that feeds the tree of heaven. And when you crush an apple with your teeth, say to it in your heart, your seed shall live in my body, and the buds of your tomorrow shall blossom in my heart. And your fragrance shall be my breath, and together we shall rejoice through all the seasons. And in the autumn, when you gather the grapes of your vineyards for the winepress, say in your heart, I too am a vineyard, and my fruit shall be gathered for the winepress. And like new wine, I shall be kept in eternal vessels. And in winter, when you draw the wine, let there be in your heart a song for each cup, and let there be in the song a remembrance for the autumn days, and for the vineyard, and for the winepress.
Thank you, Gary. Who would like to read? If we don't have a volunteer, we'll rotate through the same readers. So we'll go with Maritza, unless there is somebody who types in R in the next 2-3 in about 10 seconds. Rupali, go ahead.
On Eating and Drinking by Kahlil Gibran. Then an old man, a keeper of an inn, said, speak to us of eating and drinking. And he said, would that you could live on the fragrance of the earth, and like an air plant be sustained by the light. But since you must kill to eat, and rob the newly born of its mother's milk to quench your thirst, let it be then an act of worship. And let your board stand an altar on which the pure and the innocent of forest and plain are sacrificed, for that which is purer and still more innocent in man. When you kill a beast, say to him in your heart, by the same power that slays you, I too am slain, and I too shall be consumed. For the Lord that delivered you into my hand shall deliver me into a mightier hand. Your blood and my blood is not but the sap that feeds the tree of heaven. And when you crush an apple with your teeth, say to it in your heart, your seeds shall live in my body, and the buds of tomorrow shall blossom in my heart, and your fragrance shall be my breath, and together we shall rejoice through all seasons. And in autumn, when you gather the grapes of your vineyards for the winepress, say in your heart, I too am a vineyard, and my fruit shall be gathered for the winepress. And like new wine, I shall be kept in eternal vessels. And in the winter, when you draw the wine, let there be in your heart a song for each cup, and let there be in the song a remembrance for the autumn days, and for the vineyard, and for the winepress.
Thank you, Rupali. All right, comments. Go ahead and type a exclamation mark if you'd like to comment. I just want to say that it's just amazing. I just love the selection of topics, how people go ahead and ask him about anything, and the way he answers them. I just love it. Next up is going to be Ebony, followed by Gary.
I think I've never heard of consuming food be said so beautifully. I think it is not appreciation just of the simple fact that you have food, but that the sacrifice that is made of the animal. And I think it's something that we don't appreciate enough, that an animal is slain for us, for our human consumption, so that our life continues. And I think it's the mindfulness that this animal is now a part of you and is therefore still a part of life. And, even when we pass on, if we're buried, we become part of the life cycle. We become part of the grass, and, in some cases, the part of the trees, and, the trees give oxygen to life. So we're still, in a sense, a part of it. And I think even like when we're eating plants, like he describes it, eating the apple, and recognizing that the apple is giving its life up for you so that you can continue, but like recognizing that one day you will also be a part of that chain of life, and that, everything on this earth is united. So I think just the beauty of it, and to sit down and to really appreciate it. And I think when we look at it, and we look at it as being a part of the life cycle, and just being a part of life itself, I think it really connects us to, not only, what we're putting in our body, but like the life that is continuing in us. So I never heard of eating food so beautifully.
Wonderful. Thank you, Evanique. Next up is Gary.
I definitely want to say thank you, Ebonique, and it's good to see you again.
You too.
Actually, the thing that stood out to me on this one is the eating as an act of worship, and that reminded me of Thich Nhat Hanh spoke in a tiny little book called Making Space, and he said, imagine, just like what Ebonique noticed, all the effort, when you eat this orange or you eat this food, like that it was a plant in the ground for however long, how much water had to nourish this plant, how much man hours took to just take care of the plant. And that's all just leading up to finally it's going to blossom and then turn into a fruit, and then be plucked, and the hands that had to go and to bring this in, and just the whole process. And that's only the orange slice on your plate. That's with all the other food. All of this there's such a history. And his conclusion was, you're never eating alone, because of so many hands have gone into preparing this meal. It's not you preparing the meal. It's a whole community has brought it to your plate. And so I just love this whole section about food and about eating. It just reminded me so much of that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gary. Let's see. Who would like to go next? Maritza, go ahead.
For me, my favorite line in this section is the last one, where he says, "And let there be a song, let there be in the song a remembrance for the autumn days, and for the vineyard, and for the winepress." And it's talking about a song in your heart for each cup. I really like that. It evokes kind of very similar to what Gary was just saying, the idea of just stopping and kind of being in that moment, like making it something. I think something in modern times that is it's almost a lost thing, the idea of supper, of supping. We often eat like, I just inhaled my food today. I probably didn't entirely taste it. I ate it in 10 minutes while chatting with you, waiting for this meeting to start. But in back in the day, people used to sit around a table and it was a gathering, and you weren't just sharing bread together. You were sharing, smiles and laughter and love. And I think that these lines here kind of bring to mind that idea, and a call for us to attempt to keep that alive, as it were. And it sounds very lovely to me.
Wonderful. Thank you, Maritza. Maritza, can you handle the moderating from now on? I'll need to step away. We can go ahead to the next reading.
Okay. Would anyone else want to comment here quickly before we move on? You have a couple seconds in case anyone wants. All right. Behind that, so we're going to do 2 readings of this next one. It's going to be first read by me and then by Avanique. I'm going to rotate through the readers. If you would like to read, please type an R in the chat. If not, I don't see any new people, I'll just rotate through the existing ones. So we're moving on to work. Then a plowman said, "Speak to us of work." And he answered, saying, "You work that you may keep pace with the earth and the soul of the earth. For to be idle is to become a stranger unto the seasons, and to step out of life's procession that marches in majesty and proud submission towards the infinite. When you work, you are a flute through whose heart the whispering of the hours turns to music. Which of you would be a reed, dumb and silent, when all else sings together in unison? Always you have told that work, always you have been told that work is the curse and labor a misfortune. But I say to you that when you work, you fulfill a part of earth's furthest dream, assigned to you when that dream was born, and in keeping yourself with labor, you are in truth loving life. And to love life through labor is to be intimate with life's inmost secret. But if you in your pain call birth an affliction, and the support of the flesh a curse written upon your brow, then I answer that naught but the sweat of your brow shall wash away that which is written. You have been told also that life is darkness, and in your weariness you echo what was said by the weary. And I say that life is indeed darkness, save when there is urge, and all urge is blind, save when there is knowledge, and all knowledge is vain, save when there is work, and all work is empty, save when there is love. And when you work with love, you bind yourself to yourself and to one another and to God. And what is it to work with love? It is to weave the cloth with threads drawn from your heart, even as if your beloved were to wear that cloth. It is to build a house with affection, even as if your beloved were to dwell in that house. It is to sow seeds with tenderness and reap the harvest with joy, even as if your beloved were to eat the fruit. It is to charge all things you fashion with a breath of your own spirit, and to know that all the blessed dead are standing about you and watching. Often have I heard you say, as if speaking in sleep, he who works in marble and finds the shape of his own soul in the stone is nobler than he who plows the soil. And he who seizes the rainbow to lay it on a cloth in the likeness of man is more than he who makes the sandals for our feet. But I say, not in sleep, but in the overwakefulness of noontide, that the wind speaks not more sweetly to the giant oaks than to the least of all the blades of grass. And he alone is great, who turns the voice of the wind into a song made sweeter by his own loving. Work is love made visible. And if you cannot work with love, but only with distaste, it is better that you should leave your work and sit at the gate of the temple and take alms of those who work with joy. For if you bake bread with indifference, you bake a bitter bread that feeds but half man's hunger. And if you grudge the crushing of the grapes, your grudge distills a poison in the wine. And if you sing, though as angels, and love not the singing, you muffle man's ears to the voices of the day and the voices of the night. All right, next up, we're going to have Evanique for a second reading. Oops, sorry.
Then a plowman said, "Speak to us of work." And he answered, saying, "You work that you may keep a pace with the earth and the soul of the earth. For to be idle is to become a stranger unto the seasons, and to step out of life's procession that marches in majesty and proud submission towards the infinite. When you work, you are a flute through whose heart the whispering of the hours turns to music. Which of you would be a reed, dumb and silent, when all else sings together in unison? Always you have been told that work is a curse and labor a misfortune. But I say to you that when you work, you fulfill part of the earth's furthest dream, assigned to you when that dream was born. And in keeping yourself with labor, you are in truth loving life. And to love life through labor is to be intimate with life's inmost secret. But if you, in your pain, call birth an affliction, and the support of the flesh a curse written upon your brow, then I answer that not, but the sweat of your brow shall wash away what is written, that which is written. You have been told also that life is darkness, and in your weariness you echo what was said by the weary. And I say that life is indeed darkness, save when we when there is when there is urge, and all urge is blind, save when there is knowledge, and all knowledge is vain, save when there is work, and all work is empty, save where there is love. And when you work with love, you bind yourself and to one another and to God. And what is it to work with love? It is to weave the cloth with threads drawn from your heart, even as if you beloved were to wear that cloth. It is to build a house with affection, even as if your beloved were to dwell in that house. It is to sow seeds with tenderness and reap the harvest with joy, even as if your beloved were to eat the fruit. It is to charge all things you fashion with a breath of your own spirit, and to know that all of the blessed dead are standing about you and watching. Often have I heard you say, as if speaking in sleep, he who works in marble and finds the shape of his own soul in the stone is nobler than he who plows the soil. And when he who seizes the rainbow to lay it on a cloth in the likeness of man is more than he who makes the sandals for our feet. But I say, not in sleep, but in the over wakefulness of noontide, that when the wind speaks, not more sweetly to the giant oaks than to the least of all the blades of grass. And he alone is great who turns the voice of the wind into a song made sweeter by his own loving. Work is love made visible. And when you cannot work with love, but only with distaste, it is better that you should leave your work and sit at the gate of the temple and take alms of those who work with joy. For if you break a bread with indifference, you bake a bitter bread that feeds but half man's hunger. And if you grudge the crushing of the grapes, you grudge the distills your grudge distills a poison in the wine. And if you sing though as angels and love not the singing, you muffle ears with the voice of the day and the voices of the night.
Thanks, Ebonique. That was great. So now let's take comments. Folks, type in an exclamation if you would like to comment on this passage. You can tell us the lines that spoke to you, or what you heard in these words. Just type in an exclamation. For me, of the passages that we're reading today, this one was by far the most beautiful. I mean, they're all lovely, right? But there are so many gems here. I am gonna let Evanique go first, and then I'll comment later.
Yeah, I think I love the part about work. I think I love this whole section because it's kind of like um it has you fall in love with work. Um because you got to think about what you're doing it for, who you're doing it for. He says, to work as if you're working for the one you love, for your beloved. right? And if you think about it, you're working for, your hands are working for, not only the people that you love that are intimate with you, like your family, your friends, your relationships. You are also working for other people's families, right? When you do your work, you are, in a sense, you are working for other people's relationships. And if you look at that as your own, the work doesn't come begrudgingly. You become understanding, you become more loving at work, and you kind of give your best self to it. And, a lot of people say, you only work 8 hours a day, you only work, um, just do the bare minimum. There's this thing about doing the bare minimum, but will the bare minimum satisfy you? And in a sense, it's not about satisfying your boss, it's satisfying you. I always say, if you have to be there for the 8 hours, you might as well give it your best, because why not? Right? Like, why would you want to go there and do you know, a half-baked job? And like I said, it shows here, it'll show in your work, it'll show with the people. And you think about it, if you've ever been around a person that has done half-baked work, it does drag down the whole team. It does drag down the energy of work, right? Of the people that work there, that people don't want to be there because, people are not giving their all. And it just has this bad energy. And I love that he uses so many different examples. And he's like, if you don't want to work, go to the temple and, take up the alms. And I think that, like, when you're taking the alms, I think it's in a sense like, it sounded to me like it's almost better not to work if you don't want to do the work. It's like kind of like living off the hand of others, right? You know, better that you stay at the temple, but if you're at the temple, you could be praying for people, you could be doing something, you could be there. And I think, you know, unfortunately, like, for a lot of people, that isn't an option. But and I think you just have to it's kind of like saying, make the best of what you do. Like, do the best job that you can. That way you can be pleasing to you. And then when you come home, you can be pleasing to your family and pleasing to your friends. And it's like, even the art of cooking, right? If you don't, like, we all have those days where we just don't feel like cooking, right? And your food doesn't taste the same. It doesn't have, because you didn't want to do it. And that energy goes in that food. And I think it's a practical thing too, right? Like, you may miss some of the ingredients, or you may put in something wrong because you're not really paying attention, because you don't really care, because you don't want to do it that day. It would be better to maybe find something quick, maybe find that piece of fruit, right? That's at home, and they'd be like, okay, well, enjoy what nature already did the work for, because you don't want to do it today, and it's not going to be good. And so I love that concept, and I think it helped me to reframe work.
Thank you, Evanique. That's great. Next up is Narima.
Yeah, in an ideal world, if you don't, the part he wrote about, yes, if you don't like your work, go to the temple, collect alms from people who enjoy their work. But I would have liked to see that rewritten in a way that maybe get the person who doesn't like their work to maybe find an avenue to get different work, because somebody reading that text literally and they have the seed in there, they just don't want to work, would just quit their job. Maybe it's not the right thing for them to do. But anyway, I would have liked to see that elaborated in a more kind of positive way that wouldn't distract a person with their livelihood. Thanks.
Thank you, Narima. Folks, go ahead and type exclamation mark if you would like to make some comments. Next up is Gary.
This actually kind of, how Shukant was saying, is that the Christian influence is kind of pervades. And so this made me think of like, the Garden of Eden and the curse, and it says, oh, by the sweat of your brow you shall work. And it's like, what I got out of it was the idea that we were built and created to work and to do it joyfully. And and that's kind of what he's talking about, is like that choice to suffer while we work is a choice that you have, and that we can bring joy into whatever work that we do, because that's what we're created to do, is to be productive. And so there were aspects of this this whole section that really kind of spoke to me on that level. The section on loving life with your labor, that's the one that really spoke to me, is that when that the work that I do is an act of love. And if I'm going to a job, or I'm doing something, or even if somebody says, can you help me move, we never really enjoy asking people for help if they're going to do it begrudgingly, if they bring the bad attitude with them. And so this reminded me of a friend of mine from college. It was moving. He was asked to help move, and he framed it as, oh, today I get to go help Marcia move. And he saw the work that he was doing as a privilege, and this whole idea of work ties into the preceding section on giving, and that when we work, this is something that we get to give people, and we get to give part of ourselves through that labor. And so that aspect of this section really spoke to me. I would agree with Narima, kind of struggling over what's going on with the alms in that section, but maybe there's that aspect of it where he's like, if you're not able to work with love, then don't work. It's just like, because nobody needs that attitude. But that's it.
Thanks, Gary. That's kind of the way I saw it. I saw the idea of, this idea of, he says, work is love made visible. So if you are begrudging work, you're kind of begrudging love, is what he's saying. And because he's already told us in previous passages that we're all interwoven, life, life is, we're all part of this thing called life. And the, he says, it is to charge all things you fashion with a breath of your own spirit. So basically what he's saying is, if you are charging things with your begrudging spirit, you are causing damage, not just to yourself, but to everything around you. And so for that, instead, he would rather you stop, you reflect, and you beg alms. At least to me, that's the way I see it, as being a kind of a commentary on the fact that we could even be doing harm by doing our work grudgingly. And brings to mind for me, the saying that I don't actually remember where I heard it, but I often say, anything worth doing is worth doing well. And it's like, if I am going to be like a bus person in a restaurant, I'm going to be the best bus person I can be. If I'm a manager of a major company, I'm going to try to be the best manager I can be. There's no difference there. I'm going to tackle them, the smaller job, with the same energy and desire to do it well. And I think that that's kind of what we're hearing here. And for me, I think that there was only very little stated about the alms, and he didn't elaborate, because that wasn't the main point. The main point was, do all these things, try to reframe. Like, I love what you said, Gary, the idea of, I get to help somebody move, because that's, again, it's a shifting of your perspective. And I think maybe that's what he's alluding to here, the idea of, if you sit by the temple and you beg alms, maybe your heart and your perspective will change as you see people being generous. So I think that that's the idea of, at least as I would interpret it, what he's getting at there. If anyone else would like to chime in, I'd love to hear your thoughts on anything in this section, but specifically that question. A couple people have questioned it, the idea of what is he saying when he's asking us about collecting alms, so because he's talking about if you're doing work with like a grudge or with hatred in your heart, you're actually, you're poisoning the well, as it were. And so he's saying, remove yourself from that. And to me, the beauty in that statement is the very, very soft and indirect reminder that we are all connected. And that's what I see there. Next up is Evanique.
Yeah, and I see that passage of like go to the temple and go get alms, and I think of it as almost like reset yourself, right? Like like when you're fed up, like maybe if you can't break out of this funk that you're in, and that you can't seem to break it no matter what you do, I think it's just like take a break. He's offering, take a break, take some time away from the work. Go and, just kind of be for a minute. And then I think it's like when you're ready and when you feel like, not when you feel the love, but when you can go back to work and not be begrudging about it, and you've taken time, then you can give back you can give yourself to your work. Because if you think about it, if you give yourself to your work and that's, you're giving yourself back to life, because we're all a part of this earth and we're all connected with nature. Like we were saying earlier about the food, and like the people that pick, the people that like gather the harvest, the people that plant the seeds, the people that maintain the farm so that we can have food. All of those people are so important, and the work that they do is important, and you don't want them to do their work begrudgingly, because if they do, then like that's your food supply, right? There's people not caring about your food supply, and if the people are caring and realizing that the work that they're doing, like this work is going to go into people's bodies, and really getting that, and like and even the work that the plants are doing, and that they're taking, if you're planting something in the ground and it's going up, like just, not only working, but appreciating, and also appreciating the simple fact that people will need a break from work at times to rest and refill their cup. That way they can give even more. And taking that when you need to take a break, not taking it as a failure, but taking it as, I'm taking time to give back to myself. That way I can give back to others, and I can get back to work. And, and it's work not in just the sense of like, I think a lot of people think of today as corporate America, that it's also, the work you put in, if you're a parent, the work you're giving to your child, to your family. It's also like, people that are cooking for their families, that the work that they're putting into that. So it's all types of work. It's not just like the work that you get paid for. It's the work that you do to sustain your life and to like thrive. So I think looking at it all.
Thank you, Evanique. Those are some great points. Thank you. Next up is Narima.
Yeah, the two lines do make sense to me. Yes, if you don't like your work, leave it. But I don't know how relevant it is in today's world. People do leave their jobs. They move sideways. They quit. They get another job. They don't take the time out to, maybe some people do, but just questioning the relevance of it. And if you do cook your food with love, it tastes better. My mom used to cook with very few ingredients, and it was the most delicious food you could ever eat. And if you put your food together without not being mindful, it doesn't taste the same. So yes, we need to add that special ingredient to everything we do. Thanks.
Like that. Thank you. Yes, the special ingredient is love. And next up is Rupali.
Hello. I want to say that the very first part, he talks about work to keep pace with the earth and the soul of the earth. And we've read Louis Sullivan, where he talks about man as a worker. I often talk about Maria Montessori, who recognized that a great need for a child is to work. And if a child is not working, then the child will throw a tantrum because there's an unmet need. Also, when we read Buckminster Fuller, we see his idea about the human desire to work, to create, to use our imagination to do something. So I feel it is such an innate part of being human is to work. And I like the way he starts with, you work that you may keep pace with the earth, that you are in tune and with the soul of the earth. Because otherwise, things are going to happen and things are going to pass by and you're just going to be left out. When we were reading Gitanjali, we talked about the poem where he says, let me be the flute and let your music, and your is the God, let your music play through me. So the second stanza reminds me of that. When you work, you are a flute, and the heart is whispering of the hours that turns to music. Otherwise, if you're not working, you're just nothing. You're a reed. And it reminds me of Rudyard Kipling's children's story. It's called How the Camel Got Its Hump. And in there, he ends the story with a poem and he says, we all get the hump, the camellia's hump, the hump that's black and blue. And it's all about, if you don't work, you feel grouchy and, unfriendly. But if you work, you feel energized and excited. And that's the music that your heart sings because you're happy when you work. I just feel this poem is so much to kind of capture the human condition of, we feel that that work is a chore. So he goes on to say, always you've been told that work is a curse and labor a misfortune. But I say to you, when you work, you fulfill a part of Earth's furthest dream assigned to you when the dream was born. And so, again, I'll go back to Maria Montessori or Buckminster Fuller, where they say, you were born for a purpose. What is my purpose? Who am I? And why am I here? It's your work that will talk about who you are and why we are here. But I think often people think, oh, I have to go to work. And instead of saying, wow, I get to work, how wonderful is that? I'm awake, alive. I can do something to make a difference. So I really like that. And then the most powerful stanza, I think, is here. You have been told also that life is darkness. And in your weariness, you echo what was said by the weary. And I say that life is indeed darkness, save when there is urge. And all urge is blind, save when there is knowledge. And all knowledge is vain, save when there's work. And all work is empty, save when there is love. And when you work with love, you bind yourself to yourself and to one another and to God. And, we, in the city that my school is, there's an artist in residence. He's come from India. And uh, on the radio, he was talking about how he practices his music. And he says when he does his sadhana, which is his practice, he is completely engrossed. And when he is in that flow or in that state or that zone, he feels he's almost with God, because he is his, that's the quality of his music or the work that he produces. And so I really love the sentence, when you work with love, you bind yourself, to one another, and to God. And it just encompasses the entire world or universe that we are in. And like Narima said, there's nothing that beats the food that's made with love. So work is such an important part of being human. And often people who work without a purpose, or who just work for a paycheck, they're missing out on this great feeling of fulfillment that we get from work. And when we read Kindergarten Chats, and Louis Sullivan talks about how the work is a reflection of the man that created it. And so work is love made visible. That is really amazing. That it just brings back all the words from Kindergarten Chats, or Ayn Rand's Fountainhead, or Maria Montessori, all of them. Very nice poem. Thank you.
Thank you, Rupali. So many great points that you made. I love the so one of my favorite lines of this section, this poem, is the work is love made visible. I feel like it packs a gut punch, and it's the idea. So all of the lines that precede that, which you just reread for us, they culminate with that idea that we were kind of toying with a little, or grappling with a little bit before you spoke. The idea of, why does it matter if this one person is working grudgingly? And this is why it matters. It matters because when you work with love, you bind yourself to yourself and to one another and to God. And so if we are all attached or binded, if one of us is spreading poison, one of us is poisoning the others. So to me, the gentle admonition that we should step away and extract ourselves if we are spewing poison, I think it works. It's interwoven here very softly and gently, but it's kind of a necessary thing once it's already been stated that we are all, bound one to the other. And I like the call for a reminder of community-centric beings, as it were, because that's kind of what that is what we are. And the idea of, if you, and I love, now Rupali has said it, and so did Gary, this idea of, let's just reframe the narrative. You don't have to go to work. You get to go to work. And I think there's just something powerful in that. And, here we have studied together many different philosophies, and we have touted the value of embracing multiple perspectives and shifting perspectives. And to me, this is just a way of saying just that. We know how to do it for things external. Let's do it for something so internalized as the way in which we view work. Avanique mentioned that we spend 8 hours a day, most of us, doing this thing called work. Why on earth would we allow ourselves to believe that this is something to be done grudgingly or with hatred? wouldn't life be much sweeter if you convince yourself that you get to go to work? Because that's what you spend most of your day doing. So why not find pleasure there? And in this beautiful poem, we're hearing that just something so simple as finding pleasure there, it gives so much more than that one thing, because it's not just for you, it's for your creation, it's for your neighbor, for your earth, for your soul. And I think that that's just so profound a statement. I also like, so nobody here brought up the idea of, the line where he talks about where people are saying that, he who works in marble is nobler than he who plows the soil. And he naysays that. I think that's also like just brilliantly worded, and I love that he says and then he makes a point of saying, you've heard kind of mumbled about, people kind of say, to the side or behind your backs, they're kind of mumbling that there is such a thing as, tears to work, and that some jobs are better than others. And he's saying that, and he's saying it in broad daylight, and he's speaking loudly so that all can hear. He's saying that there's not a difference there. And I think that it's something that we should be reminded. And the way it's said, this statement, the wind speaks not more sweetly to the giant oaks than to the least of all the blades of grass. So whether we are the oak or we are the grass, our duty in this earth is important. And so if we are poisoning it by whatever we're doing grudgingly, it will affect all the others. And so I just want to point out that one line, because that's another favorite. I just think it's so beautiful. Next up is Gary.
I just wanted to thank you for pointing out that one line about the marble and all that. Because I kind of glossed over it when I first read it. And then it occurs to me is that, the idea there is that, the work that we do, especially if we do it with joy, if we do it with love, that it's an art form, and it's no less a work of art than the sculptor who sculpts a marble, or the person, whatever work of, whatever it is. And it's like, and the wind blows just as sweetly and softly past the giant oak as the blade of grass. It's all just, it's equal there, it's all just as honoring to God, Now that was really beautiful. Thanks for bringing that up.
Thank you. And I find delight in getting the pleasure of hearing the statement again, this time from your lips. It is really a lovely line. So folks, let me give you another, 10 to 30 seconds. If anyone would like to make any more comments on this poem about work, please go ahead and type an exclamation. If not, we'll go ahead and we'll move on to joy and sorrow. I'd like to call on our next two readers, Gary and Rupali. Are you guys still okay with reading? Perfect, fantastic. Let me set you up here. Well, giving folks just another second in case anyone wants to make another comment about work. I'm not seeing anyone jumping up to make a comment, so let's oh, fantastic. Thank you, Rupali. All right. Joy and sorrow.
Then a woman said, "Speak to us of joy and sorrow." And he answered, "Your joy is your sorrow unmasked, and the selfsame well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. And how else can it be? The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. Is not the cup that holds your wine the very cup that was burned in the potter's oven? And is not the lute that soothes your spirit the very wood that was hollowed with knives? When you are joyous, look deep into your heart and you'll find it is only that which has given you sorrow that is giving you joy. When you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight. Some of you say, joy is greater than sorrow, and others say, nay, sorrow is the greater. But I say unto you, they are inseparable. Together they come, and when one sits alone with you at your board, remember that the other is asleep upon your bed. Verily, you are suspended like scales between your sorrow and your joy. Only when you are empty are you at standstill and balanced. When the treasure keeper lifts you to weigh his gold and his silver, needs must your joy or your sorrow rise or fall.
Should I read, Maritza?
Yes, please, Rupali.
Yeah. On Joy and Sorrow by Kahlil Gibran. Then a woman said, speak to us of joy and sorrow. And he answered, your joy is your sorrow unmasked, and the selfsame well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. And how else can it be? The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. Is it not the cup that holds your wine, the very cup that was burned in the potter's oven? And is it not the lute that soothes your spirit, the very wood that was hollowed with knives? When you are joyous, look deep into your heart, and you shall find it is only that which has given you sorrow that is giving you joy. When you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for what which has been your delight. Some of you say, joy is greater than sorrow, and others say, nay, sorrow is the greater. But I say unto you, they are inseparable. Together they come, and when one sits alone with you at your board, remember that the other is asleep upon your bed. Verily, you are suspended like scales between your sorrow and your joy. Only when you are empty, you are at standstill and balanced. When the treasure keeper lifts you to weigh his gold and his silver, needs must your joy or your sorrow rise or fall.
Thank you, Gary and Rupali. All right, let's take comments. Please type in an exclamation mark in the chat if you would like to comment on this poem on joy and sorrow. I feel like this poem starts off like extremely fierce. You know, we're like 2 lines in and we get this like doozy of a line. Your joy is your sorrow unmasked. And then you have to like pause and recuperate before you can continue reading. I just, it's such a powerful statement. And you know, when I first read it, I had to like stop and think of whether or not I thought that was true. Let's go with Narima. Go ahead, Narima.
Yeah, I just read a book about Thich Nhat Hanh. He wrote, "No mud, no lotus," and it is so true. As I age, I see that they're so intertwined. You know, the happiness and the sorrow, and it's just part of it. Like, we just cannot expect to be 100% on the high of life. You know, there's that downside that we must balance, and that's why they're saying to, you know, keep an equilibrium, and that way you're okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Nadia. That's so true. Next up, I have Gary.
That doozy of the line, it so when I was working for the Army, it was as a psychiatric nurse, and so we would do a lot of discussion on PTSD, and one of the things that they brought up is the level of distraught that people have, especially when people experience this grief, that pit of despair, is it's a reflection of how deeply they have loved, and it's not just a cognitive reframing. It's you kind of have to remind people of it, is that the reason why you're going through this turmoil right now is because you loved oh so deeply. And people who don't love and don't know how to love, can go through and experience tragedy and not really be unaffected to it because they were never attached to it. That reminds me of I forget William. I think the guy's name was his last name was Peck, but he wrote the book The Road Less Traveled, and he talks about this idea of cathexis, that we attach ourselves to certain things and we attach ourselves to people in a very real and different, in a very meaningful way, and that's what yes. And so anyhow, that's what stuck out to me, is when it talks about this joy and sorrow and the two are intertwined. It just like it resonated with everything that I learned and worked with in psych, and just what goes on, that the two really are. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Gary. That's interesting. The idea of I like the line, when he reminds me, he says, they are inseparable. And I like, it says, when one sits alone with you at your board, remember that the other is asleep upon your bed. And I like that. To me, and even then he goes to tell us that, we're suspended like scales between sorrow and joy. And to me, that brings up, different, the concept that we study in Stoicism, the idea of finding a balance where, you don't, too much of either of them is not good. But we also can't do without either. And so I like that he's talking about it being, and he says, only when you are empty are you at a standstill and balanced. And in my mind, the image that comes up here is because if we are suspended like scales between our joy and our sorrow, it stands to reason that when we're filled up with either one, we're going to be skewed, right? So, the balance will be fine and getting more empty. And so I like the imagery of that. Folks, go ahead and type exclamation if you would like to comment on joy and sorrow. I like that he makes a point here to point out to us that many people will say that joy, like that one is greater than the other. Go ahead, Evanique.
Yeah, I think, I always like that. This one actually caused me a little bit of anxiety because, thank you, Gary. So I think this one causes me a little bit of anxiety because I think of it like, especially when he's talking about if you're experiencing joy, like sorrow is right there on your bed. And I think because then you're like always looking for like the other shoe to drop. Like if you're feeling good and there's the joy, and then you're like, oh, well, where's the sorrow going to come from? And I used to feel like that, like when everything was going good, I'm like, something's coming. Like I was always that person, like something's coming because it's going too good. But I think to look at it as like you need both. I always think of it as a painting, right? And a painter, they have the 8 basic colors, right? I think it's 8 basic colors. I don't know the exact number, but they have like a certain amount of colors, and they use it to make all of these different colors, and they need the dark. Like one is black and white, right? Like literally it's dark contrast. Like one is black and one is white. And so when you're looking at that and you're like, yeah, like that's so, I don't know, like like you need it, but then it's like it's one of those things where it's like it's a double-edged sword. But then if you look at it as if, okay, yes, we need it, and yes, it both will bring like a fulfillment of life. Like once you see the painting as a whole, you realize how beautiful it is. And then you realize if you didn't go through those dark moments, that you would never be where you are now. And it helps you to appreciate where you are now, especially, if you like where you are. And if you don't like where you are right now, just know that one day, if you just appreciate like this time, you're going to like it. So I don't know. I just think like, I used to have anxiety about it. Like this passage really did bring up that back in the day anxiety, but now it's like it helps you appreciate life more if you've had those dark times. And if you accept that those dark times will come and that they're not necessary and they're going to be used to actually make you a better person, then maybe you can just shift your perspective on it. And they're not like opposed. It's kind of like they work together to give you a fulfilling life.
It's fascinating, Evanique, the idea of it bringing up that past anxiousness. That's so interesting. I would like to, if you beg me I beg of you the indulgence of a suggestion to reframe the narrative here. Yes. So I learned, or I conditioned myself long ago to view things like that. So I tell people I just don't live with regrets, because I have made my peace long ago with the fact that the woman that stands here today could not be the woman without every moment of my past, both the joys and the sorrows and everything in between. And if I am at peace with the woman that stands before you today, I have to embrace both the joys and the sorrows that I have lived. Because the sorrows were the fire that forged the being that remains. And without them, you would not have emerged, right? So, in that, with that perspective, I use that to, I'm not gonna lie, obviously we all have sorrow, but I strive very hard not to be seeking that shoe to drop, because if you are looking constantly at your bed because you are certain that sorrow lies upon it, you are not fully engaging in the joy, and you're missing it because you're looking. So if you accept that that sorrow will come around again, but that in the today, in this moment, you have the joy, and you will deal with sorrow when it arrives. Now you allow yourself the freedom to be more at the table with joy, instead of with one ear looking for the sorrow. It's coming. Don't you worry. It's gonna come. It's gonna find you. It always will. Just like all things in life, it'll circle back around. But if you accept that it will circle back around, then now you're free to just enjoy that moment. Very hard lesson. It's one that, I'm still trying to learn, but it's, I suffered a lot of tragedy when I was really young. So it was just a matter of, had to make the decision to not keep looking over my shoulder, because that's your default. It's almost like when you're young, you don't have yet that muscle memory to not seek or that other shoe to drop. Like you don't know any other way of being. So as you get older, you have to kind of make the conscious decision. So I just wanted to share that shifting of perspective with you. Folks, with
Yeah,
anyone else? Oh, I'm
thank
sorry.
you.
Go ahead.
Now, I was just going to say thank you. And you're right. Like it does rob you of your joy if you keep, um, you know, looking for the sorrow. And I think I've learned that, but I think it's still like one of those things where you're like, you have to like recognize that you're doing it, that you're looking for that other shoe to drop. So, yeah, thank you for that. And you're right. It does. It really does rob you of the joy of the moment.
And that's a hard one. It's a hard one. I feel like that one is almost harder than the idea of like stopping. Like, it's so knee jerk for us to say, I wish I had never lived through that. But then when you stop and you realize that if you were ever truly granted that wish, you would not be you. And that is mind blowing. So I hear in this poem that the idea of embracing it, because it's what makes you who you are and shapes you and your world and those around you. Thank you, Ebony. That was delightful. I enjoyed that, the interaction. Well, guys, would anyone else like to comment here? Don't let us hog up all the chatter. I mean, because we will.
Yeah.
I can talk about these poems ad nauseum. So, while you guys are getting your courage up, type in an exclamation mark.
Oh, I think Connie raised her hand.
Oh, I didn't see it. I'm so sorry. Go ahead, Connie.
Well, that's okay. I couldn't
Okay.
see I couldn't get the explanation point to go in.
No worries. Hi, welcome.
So, yes. Wow. Maritza and Ebony, beautiful. I live now by this too shall pass. I really, when I'm in a lot of sorrow, I sort of meditate on that. And I also, as I'm getting older, embracing the joys as much as I can and acknowledging and feeling them fully. Because Evanika was a bit of the other shoe to drop and still sort of do that also. But this was just beautiful. And it's like the seasons, isn't it? It's like nature in action with the seasons and the tides of joy and sorrow. Thank you.
That's a great point. Thank you, Constance. I like that, the seasons and tides. It's if we think about what we've read through here today, I mean, the subjects, man, wow. We kind of ran the gamut here, and so many like heavy hidden type of things. Given, eating, work, joy, sorrow. It's a lot. But what strikes me is that the common thread throughout all of these is the idea of, or not the idea, but what I hear in this common thread is how everything we do affects nature and others. And the admonition within the poems are to be cognizant of that fact. I would love to hear some of your comments on that. Like if we, as we're winding down here with our evening, if we look at these together, or even some of the ones we read at our last get together, some common themes, or what's the interwoven thread that you're hearing here, or what's speaking to you when we look at them kind of more as a cohesive unit as opposed to singly. Go ahead and type the exclamation. Go ahead, Evanique.
I think, especially tonight, what I saw is like, I think it's the interconnection of everybody and everything. And I think, to me, when he talks about work and he talks about eating and he talks about joy and sorrow, it's all interrelated. Like, if you don't have joy with your work, and then, you're not, and you're doing your work begrudgingly, the difference that it has on everybody. And then that energy is coming back to you, and you see this negative cycle. Um, you know, when even plants, like when they're not getting enough sun, when they're not getting what they need, um, then they don't produce the fruit that can nourish our bodies, or that, now there's a scarcity because there's maybe too much rain or not enough sun, or one of those things. And it's always one of those things where it's going to pass, but at the same time you have to like go through it. Like, you have to go through it. And I think of farmers, and I guess because my mom is, well, actually my grandparents are all from the South, and my mom. And so, seeing them go through it, like if there's too much sun, the corn like rots on, you know, uh, it rots in the field, right? Like, it's not getting enough. And you can, as humans, we can do the work of, you know, getting the water and putting it on, but that only does so much. And it does save some of the crop, but it may not save all of the crop. But even in that, like, like sorrow, right? You can use that corn to feed the pigs, right? You can use the corn that, kind of is drying out, and you can feed the pigs, and you can nourish that way. Um, you can take other things from the vine that are not that are not harvestable, and give it, and then, and the thing is, like, you figure it out, you become creative. I always see the creative part of this too. Like, you become creative in how you're going to use these things of the earth. Like, you don't let it go to waste. So I think the interconnection, and like even in a plant dying, it has a use, right? And I think sometimes we don't see the use of, like, even if a person is dying and they can impart wisdom on you, right? They can leave, they leave a part of themselves with you when they do that. Their memory, when they're talking to you, and they want you to continue on, and they want you to take these things that they've learned and give it to you. So, like, even in that sorrowful moment, they're giving you their wisdom. I remember one time, and this memories in my head because I was looking for pictures for my cousin's wedding, and I was seeing Narima. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you
Eh,
so much. See you next time.
See you next time.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye bye. So I was thinking of that, and uh, I saw a picture of my grandma. She passed away years ago, and she was like, "I want to teach you how to make a sweet potato pie." And she was like, "I never taught you how to make anything." And I was like, "That's so sweet." And do I remember the recipe? No, but do I remember that memory? Yeah. So, and do I remember all the other things I learned by observing? Yeah. So, yes, definitely interconnection.
Awesome. Thank you. I will invite anyone if they have any last comments they want to make on this. While you guys think about whether you want to make a comment, let me share with you some things we have coming up here with the 52 living ideas. Tomorrow we're going to do Craft Your Own Adventure at Design Your Life Fridays. On Saturday, we're going to have Asian philosophies at 5 p.m. And we're going through Mencius, philosopher, and we're doing the it's the Menzi, and we're doing the introduction pages 1 through 16. That's to be read for that one. On Sunday at 5 p.m., we're going to do Don Carlos by Friedrich Schiller in the great classic plays of all time. We're going to read that play and discuss it. On Sunday at 8 p.m., it's our series on Bucky-inspired comprehensivity to understand and change the world. And we're going to do On Design Science by Kurt McNamara. And on Monday, we're going to have it's Poetry Mondays, and that will be with me. And I have so we're going to have Joy. I'm so sorry, I forgot the poet. But we'll have a featured poet, and we do collaborative poetry there. On Tuesday we're reading The Art of War. It's a deep dive, chapter by chapter, and this coming Tuesday will be on chapter 10. And then on Wednesday we'll be back here for Comprehensivist Wednesdays. We don't have a topic for next Wednesday. I think it's this week was neuroscience. Oh, next week is Phil for language. He's going to do a topic on language next Wednesday. On Thursday, we'll be looking at the Gospel of John, chapter 17, High Priestly Prayer. So that's what's coming up here. Thank you guys for sharing your Thursday with us. This was delightful. We will be back here for Kahlil Gibran in 2 weeks.
Yep. Just one quick note. Friday, that's my friend Jamie. So the Craft Your Life Adventure, she's going to talk about her life as a former RVer. She did RVing for 5 years, and she coaches people on how to do that if they want to do it. And then now she's doing the second part of her, well, not the second part of her life, hopefully. She's younger. But she's now in Canada with her husband, Ross. He's going to school in Charlottetown, which was one of their dreams. They went there for their honeymoon, and now they're fulfilling their dream of living it. So she's going to tell you about that as well, and how she crafted her own life. So just wanted to give a little extra plug.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Evanique.
You're welcome.
Folks, thank you. Have a good night.
Thank
Bye,
you, guys.
everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, Constance. Lovely to have you here.